What's up guys, Bo here again, and welcome to another Bojin vlog. We're experiencing some really amazing weather today as well, so I'm grateful for that, and I hope it kind of stays for a while before we get into the typical British weather. Anyway, in this entry I wanted to talk to you guys about self-love. As you guys know, if you watch any of my previous videos, you know that my message, one of my core messages is tapping into your sensitivity, right? One of the things that I'm very much passionate about is, getting people to get back in touch with their emotions and their feelings, because we live in an age that is very much head dominant, the society that we live in, and so we live in this amazing society, but we're all kind of, we all need a bit of a kick up the butt in terms of learning to, be in touch with our feelings and ultimately to love ourselves, right? And this is kind of what this entry is about. And actually this is a concept, right, that I came up with when I was reading a book recently called King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, right? And this is kind of, I believe this is kind of quite a popular book in the kind of self-development, the self-help, personal development field, particularly when it comes to men, right? Because this book is actually about King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. It's about mature masculinity, how to become a mature man. And basically I was reading this book, and basically there was a chapter about, I'm not going to give too much of the book away, but basically it talks about how we come into this world with a very kind of immature, as children basically, and children aren't, when they come into the world they're not quite developed to basically thrive in a world such as this, thrive in a world of physicality. So the child goes through several stages of development whereby, his personality structures change, basically. And there's this one section which talks about what's called the edible child, right? Which is basically an immature form of the lover archetype, in this kind of king, warrior, magician, lover, these four kind of divine archetypes, you could say. But basically, it talks about this edible child, which is basically, the mama's boy, you could say. And this Oedipal child basically is attached to the mother, basically. He's all of his kind of, he attaches to the mother to and expects the mother to meet all of his physical and emotional needs, right? And basically, you could say, the shadow side to this, the kind of undeveloped, immature side of this is that, well, basically, there's an example in the book, in that passage, right? And basically, it talks about this example of this boy who is, looking to the mother, longingly, and the mother disappoints him, and he gets annoyed, right? And he says, kind of in a state of anger to his mother, God Mother Almighty, right? But he actually meant to say God Almighty Mother, right? And basically, there was a bit of a kind of, it was a bit of a slip, right? And basically, from that point, he kind of realized the kind of, well, he realized that the kind of mother that he had been trying to kind of see his biological mother, as, is not necessarily the entirety of, well, it's not necessarily his biological mother, in the sense that, basically, we all look to our mothers for love, but ultimately our mothers are also human, right? We kind of expect our human mothers to kind of be these these kind of like, all powerful, all knowing, all, always in a state of love, beings, but, they are themselves going through a human journey. And so, and he realized this, and basically from that point on, he knew he could make the distinction between, this human being who has brought him up as his, biological mother, and also this energy, this kind of paradigm, you could say, of the divine mother, right? And I'm going to basically explain to you in this entry what this means. Ultimately, in this entry, I'm kind of giving you this concept of the divine, like father and mother, basically those energies, in order to kind of give you the kind of a paradigm by which you can then learn to reparent yourself in a way. So self-love is basically learning to reparent yourself, because those who are lacking in self-love, who aren't able to have self-love, for themselves, they basically come with dysfunction from the way they were parented and the way that they were, brought up, right? And basically, so the divine mother, right, and the divine father as well. There was also, I'll just give you a quick example in my own life where this kind of came up, right? I didn't, after, when I read that, when I was reading the book, like, it didn't actually hit me straight away, but like, there was a thing in real life when basically I was triggered, right? And the trigger was that, yeah, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but like, basically, it kind of triggered me in terms of like my insecurity around my masculinity, right? And I am, everyone is insecure to some degree, but I am insecure about my masculinity to some extent, right? There's still work to be done there, but basically I was triggered and it made me feel pretty crappy. And like, I tried to go through the emotional healing process that I talked about in previous entries, where you kind of sit with the feeling as opposed to trying to run away from it, right? And I tried to do that, but it kind of wasn't working straight away. I was just trying to sit with the feeling, and I was kind of feeling crappy, right? But then suddenly I kind of had this image in my head pop up, right? And that's the point at which I was like, fucking hell, like, like something has happened. So basically what happened was like, suddenly this image in my head came up, right? Of this beautiful woman, right? And this beautiful woman was saying to me, that I will always love you, basically. It's kind of like this beautiful woman kind of holding me in her arms, saying like, I will always love you. I will always be there for you, my son. You don't need to worry about anything. Whatever happens, whatever life throws at you, however you perceive yourself or are perceived by the people, that doesn't matter, because I'll always be there for you, eternally, right? And this evaporated, my feeling of shittiness, because before that, I was trying to be present with a feeling, but like, because this is such like a very, deeply buried kind of you could say an inner child issue, like, I was kind of not struggling with being present with and going and moving through the emotion, right, the negative emotion, but and like it's kind of like this is, to give you a bit of background as well, for all those males out there watching this, you might relate to this. As males, we're very much expected to be strong. We're not really expected to be like emotional to any capacity really in society. Well, that is at least the kind of prevalent stigma that is about males, right? You have to be strong. You have to be a certain way, and often an insecurity in masculinity is like a perceived inability for you, like a perceived weakness in yourself, right? And that kind of triggers you. But anyway, from that point, when I visualized this woman, I was like, that is what they meant, in that book, as an example, as Divine Mother, And at that point, I had a similar epiphany that the boy in the book had, where I was able to separate the responsibility well, I was able to separate my perception of, my own parents, for example, away from this essence of the father and the mother, because ultimately the essence is what is important about the parenting, about like, ultimately, like, our parents aren't there to be, to kind of cater to our every whim. Like, the whole kind of maturation process that we undergo as we kind of we develop into kind of self-actualized people, is that, like, we learn to love ourselves or parent ourselves, right? And that involves a kind of separation from how we were completely kind of dependent on our parents to cater for all of our needs, physical, emotional, and to be able to, like, take that essence of what what our parents were there to teach us, and use that to then be successful in life, and also to be able to parent our own children, right? So this is, something that is very important, like, as we kind of learn to be self-loving, right? Because self-love, the essence of self-love, right? I'm going to do another entry about this because it's quite an important thing. I noticed that, both in myself and in the world out there, that, like, there is, a very shocking, lack of the ability to self-love in this world, So basically, like, the thing with self-love is, like, the most self-loving people are the people who are able to love themselves unconditionally, basically. Like, they know, like, they are secure in the knowledge that, like, no matter what happens, they are still lovable, they are still valuable, they are still safe, and that is what the most self-loving people do, right? And this kind of essence of, like, the Divine Mother and Divine Father, which ultimately is, the Divine Mother is ultimately unconditional love. That's what the Divine Mother represents, right? And then the Divine Father represents joy in creation, basically. Like, I'll move on to the Divine Father in a bit, but basically, we have to learn to basically face that side of us. This is the emotional healing process. Face that side of us that we have disowned, but also then to learn to love it, right? And even if our own parents, our actual biological parents, were not able to do that for us or for themselves, because, they were also, taught, by their parents to not be self-loving. This isn't like you become a parent and you have to become, like, the perfect parent. Like, no, like, we kind of learn these parental patterns, or the essence of parenting from our own parents. So it's like, parents, this is how things are passed down generation to generation. But so we have to learn to, particularly if we weren't learned how to be self-loving. I really was not taught how to be self-loving myself, but we have to kind of, so, this Divine Mother image. So, I'm kind of going to break down ultimately what this Divine Mother essence looks like, and feels like, and also, Divine Father, for you guys to then take and, implement it into your own practice of self-love, right? So the Divine Mother, like I kind of briefly described, is basically, you can visualize it as anything, really. You could visualize it as a human woman, for example, like, the woman that you would deem to be your ideal mother, or you could visualize it as some kind of animal, or, like, whatever you want, really. The symbolism isn't really that important. It's what, the symbolism that is most effective for you. So you visualize a woman, for example, a beautiful woman who, like, caresses you. This might be particularly for men, it might be more particularly effective for men, but, like, and basically she says to you, I will always love you, basically. I will always be there for you, son or daughter. No matter what happens, no matter what, you think of yourself, no matter what is said by anyone, no matter how much of a failure you think you are, no matter how unlovable you think you are, no matter what happens in this existence, because I know that you are a beautiful being, no matter what happens, and I will always love you for that. And whenever you need love, then come to me and I will be there for you. I will hold you in my arms and I will be the love for you, right? And basically what this does is, like, when you imagine, this Divine Mother in this way, symbolically, it basically teaches you how to be self-loving, essentially. This is what you're doing. And the feeling you will notice is of, any anxiety, any pain, any fear that you have will just evaporate, if you do it correctly, if you kind of really go into it. And you will feel instantly fine, rejuvenated, healed, right? And so, even when things seem like, the worst that they can be, you can tap into this kind of, you can use this symbolism, you can use this kind of visualization to get into the space of self-love, which is basically unconditionally accepting of yourself, no matter what happens, no matter what you look like, so anything that is worrying you, that is causing you to be fearful, you can use this to practice self-love, right? Which is distinct from, obviously the societal model for love, right? Maybe I should have started with this, but this unconditional love is distinct from conditional love, in that you don't have to be a certain way, or you don't have to do anything in order to be a lovable person, basically. Unconditional love means that you are fine no matter if you are just being extreme, if you are a serial killer, if you are some kind of child rapist, it doesn't matter, really. The important thing is that, the energy of love, is the important thing, not what is done or what is said or what you appear to be in order to be a lovable person or to be loving, right? And just moving on to the Divine Father as well. The Divine Father, you'll also notice, just as a preface, that even though there's the Divine Father and Divine Mother, because they're kind of distinct energies in that way, we like to perceive, male and female as distinct. But when it gets to the divine level, there are basically, the energies are more androgynous, you could say. They have distinct roles, but there are qualities from each other that is shared, basically. So it's not so kind of separate. You'll notice traits within the Divine Father energy that are within the Divine Mother energy, right? They basically become this whole. So they are distinct, but it becomes this kind of whole, this kind of whole entity, basically. And I'll kind of illustrate this as well. So the Divine Father, basically, is the champion for you to become the strongest version of yourself. I'm using an Elliot Holst term there, but the strongest version of yourself. The Divine Father is the energy that causes you to become inspired about life, about doing the things that you want to do in life. Because we're here ultimately, you could argue, right? This is the positive kind of perspective on it. It's we came here to be creators and to have fun, doing this human thing. Yes, it is hard. Yes, it is shitty at times. But we also came here to have fun. And the Divine Father is the energy that causes us to come into alignment with that. So the Divine Father, son or daughter, I believe in you. I believe that you can be someone who is strong. I believe that you can do and achieve whatever you want to achieve. Fuck all the haters, right? This is what the Divine Father would say. Fuck all the haters. Fuck all the negativity. Believe in yourself. I know you can do it, son or daughter. You're here to share your gifts with the world, to really make a positive impact on society, on the planet, on existence as a whole, And I know that whatever you line yourself up to do is in the, the best interest of everyone, and even if it's not, I know that you can keep moving and keep evolving and keep changing your vision and passion until it becomes that thing that is, really, your gift to life, right? And so, yeah, that's the Divine Father. So, it's like a dad who teaches you how to play a sport or something and believes in you and that kind of thing. There is an essence of that in typical American movies in the 90s and early 00s, that kind of thing. But you notice that the Divine Mother and Divine Father, they're both, they basically integrate this unconditional loving with this joy, right? So basically, the Divine Mother is about unconditional love. It's about loving you no matter what. and that is setting you up to become the strongest version of yourself, so that you can then tackle the world from a place of health, right, and love. And the Father pushes you, the Father might push you from time to time to become, the strongest version of yourself, to continually push yourself to become better and like more aligned. But he's doing so from a place of love, right? He doesn't do it to like fulfill any kind of ego agenda, to like be proud of you, but in a way where it's like kind of very ego attached. His pride is attached to your, how you are, basically. It's not like that. He does it. The Divine Father is all about you pushing yourself to become better, but because you are doing it because you fucking love that. You want to be someone who is masterful, who is amazing at what he does, who is passionate about what he does, from a place of passion, right? It's not about dick measuring, it's not about like proving yourself or competing with other people or like survival. It's not about any of that. It's because it's learning the joy of creation. That is what the Divine Father is about, right? So the joy in creation and unconditional love, right? Those are what those two energies represent, and that is ultimately what parenting is all about, right? It doesn't like, like our parents, we love them because they are human as well. They a lot of them, had to be put into this role, and a lot of them might not have been taught how to, these two essences to parenting, right? And so, and from knowing this, we can kind of alleviate them of their kind of heavy burden of like being perfect parents, because like that's like, I wouldn't wish that on anyone. I wouldn't want to wish that on my parents or like other parents or myself, and yeah, so ultimately this is the new paradigm. This is where we need to start thinking, right, in terms of parenting and helping each other, really. Ultimately, like, the next step is for us to stop becoming dependent on each other. There is still the element of interdependency. We are still, we are still a social species, but it's learning to be self-sufficient in the like, you are secure in yourself, you know what you want to get out of life, and you're happy to be alive, and then you can share with other people from that space of completeness, right? It's not a society of people that are basically like relying on each other, like overly relying on each other, basically. Like, without each other we die. It's not like that. We are independent in that we can be self-loving for ourselves. We know what we want, and we share from that space. And that is a fucking new, awesome world, right? So cool. That was my message for this entry. I hope it's been helpful. And yeah, my message to you is just to love yourself more. Just to like really tap into that which you love and are passionate in life about, right? And yeah, hope that was helpful, and I will catch you guys in the next entry. Peace out.